Hey there, it's David Neuenhoven here. Congratulations on getting to the next step. I remember when I first started online many, many years ago, just to get on a video or just to go and watch information was a big step for me. So before we go further, I want to talk about something that's very, very important to me, and that is freedom. And I'm not talking about normal freedom. I'm talking about freedom of choice and freedom to do what you want when you want. And before I go into that and why that's important to me, I want to share a story with you. And so please bear with me for the next few minutes and why I share with you this story and why it's really important to me. So the reason that you probably clicked on a link or reached out to me is that you're looking for something. You're looking for more time, more freedom. You're either stuck in a rut, or you're not happy where you are, or you've got, no time freedom, or you're not making enough money, or you're not happy, or whatever the case may be. The point is that you're here because you're looking for a better way. So I want to share with you a bit about my background and why I feel that you might trust me to go further into the next step, because there is a lot of stuff online. There's a lot of things on the internet, all over social media. There's a lot of scams out there. There's a lot of rubbish out there. There's a lot of people making empty promises. And believe me, in my 17 years online, I've seen everything. I've been sold everything to. I've tried so many different things. And I can tell you that sometimes you have to, fall off a horse and get back on a few times before you find the right thing, like I did, 7.5 years ago. So let's go back to my story, and I want to see if any of this resonates with you. And that way you might feel that you can trust me more to perhaps go on to the next step. So this is all about you and helping you get to where you want to go and get to your goals and dreams. So it all started for me back when I was in school. I was a bit of a rebel. Now, I don't know if you were a rebel in school. Maybe you were, maybe you weren't. But, I didn't really like school. I was very small, got picked on. And my way of rebelling was to rebel the teachers. And I also used to get frustrated with the teachers because I felt that a lot of them didn't know as much as me. Now, I'm not being big-headed, but I just found that a lot of teachers were sort of boring to listen to. And, I didn't have a great attention span. There was only a couple of subjects I really enjoyed. All the rest was just rubbish. That was just me. By the time I was 15, I couldn't wait to get out of school. And I did leave school in year 11. I wasn't quite 16 yet. And I just went out and started doing some horrible, horrible jobs. I worked in a couple of factories just to get money. It was very small pay, very hard work. And not being a really big guy, I really, really struggled. And then I saw an ad in the paper, because we didn't have the internet back then, saw an ad in the paper for a job to do with photography. And because I was into photography, it really resonated with me. And it was working in a store selling photographic equipment. I applied for the job, went for an interview, got the job, and spent the next 7 years working for this company selling photographic equipment. Now, this is what's really important, this side of the story. You may or may not relate to it, but when I worked for this company, I was, taught by my dad a really strong work ethic, and also my mum, but mostly my dad. So, I started work at 9 o'clock in the morning, but I would get into work never on time or just after. I'd be in work at 8:15, 8:20, 8:30 at the latest, and I would set up the, particular area ready for the day. After the day had finished and the store would close at 5:30, I'd stayed behind, I cleaned up, I counted the money, took the money away, etc., etc. So every single day, not only was I working more hours for free, but I was also doing things in that capacity that wasn't really asked of me. I just felt like I needed to excel and do more. Now, maybe you've done that in the past with your job or business, but I just couldn't be a person that just stood there and, did nothing. I had to keep busy. That was just me. Maybe it's the ADD, but I don't know. So anyway, I was in this job for 7 years and I worked a lot of extra hours for free. And one day I went on a break, a lunch break, and I come back and I was 1 minute late on the little swipe card, 1 minute. And I don't know if you've ever been late from a lunch break, but I was freaking out because I was 1 minute late. I've been there for 7 years at this stage. And they actually docked me 15 minutes of pay, right, for being 1 minute late. So straight away, I went up to the pay office and said, hey, I was 1 minute late. I want my 15 minutes of pay back. And they said, sorry, we can't do that. I said, well, hang on. I come into work early, I leave late, and you're taking 15 minutes away from me. I said, oh, sorry, that's just the rules. And I'm like, stuff you. I said, right. So that's it. So the next day, I didn't come in until 8:59. Right? I clocked in at 8:59. By the time I went to go get the money to put into the till, they were like, "Where are you? Where have you been?" There was literally, the doors were opening, and I'm like, "I don't care." And at 5:30 that night, as soon as the bell went, I grabbed that money out the till and I went downstairs to the safe, and I was gone. I didn't care if there were people waiting. I only got paid to 5:30. Stuff you, Mr. Boss. I'm going, right? So that's what I did. And then I soon realized that they just didn't care about me at all. I'm just one of the small people in their big, pyramid scheme of business where I'm at the bottom and all the people at the top make the money, and I never make any decent money, and I couldn't ask for a pay rise or anything. They did everything they can to pay me the smallest amount of money. I think that's when I realized that maybe working for people wasn't my thing, but I was prepared to give it another go. Anyway, I moved on. I left that job. I found another job with some really nice people, stayed there for 4.5 years. And then I moved on to other industries where I stayed in retail. And what I found was I spent 17 years in retail. If you know anything about retail, is that, gradually, things change. I went from working Monday to Friday to working Saturday mornings to Saturday all day. And then I had Sundays. And then, the retail industry changed. And I worked for a number of bosses that really just had no idea how to treat people. And again, there was no rewards. There was no thank you so much. There was no Christmas bonus or anything like that. Literally, we got nothing. And it frustrated me because I always put in extra work. So after a while, I left that industry and I joined a completely new, different industry that I had no experience in whatsoever. It was a big shift for me. I won't go into it now, but I had to take some big psychological and financial steps to get into that industry. And I got into that industry. It was a bit of a rocky start, but I ended up being the best person in that field. I had the most sales, and this is my first time I was on commission sales. In fact, when I first started, they told me that there was no base rate, there was only commission. But what they didn't tell me is it took many, many months to get paid commission. So I was working literally for free for about 4 months. After about 3 months, I said, I need some money. I've got to pay for my loan. And so they started giving me some money, which I had to pay back. But it was a pretty close call. So anyway, I worked in there. I did really well, got a quite good commission. But the most important thing was I was in an industry where I was really looking after people, looking after customers, helping people change their lives, helping people get out of debt, helping people achieve things that they wouldn't normally achieve. So it was very rewarding for me. I had a lot of great feedback from people. I used to get so many referrals from people when I'd see them. They give me a list of people to go and see, their friends and family. So people had a lot of trust with me because I was the real deal, and I still am. And so people trusted me with their money, with their finances, literally with their life savings, that I would do the right thing by them. Anyway, as it turned out, after many years in this industry, the industry wasn't going that great. And also my boss was a real bad guy. I won't go into it now, but he wasn't a nice person at all. And the more I learned about him, the more I realized he wasn't a great person. People started to leave. A lot of people started to leave, and lots more people started to leave. And I realized, it was time to probably get out and do something else. Anyway, then I joined with another company through a friend. And not long after I got started, we had the GFC, so the global financial crisis collapse. I can't remember what year that was. If you know what I'm talking about, it was a really difficult time. Literally, I lost all my customers. Now, previously in the previous job, not only had I bought my own house, but I bought some investment properties as well. And I had good money coming in. I had 3 cars, I think, at the time. I had my, nice 4-bedroom house, and I had, lots of things like boats and stuff like that. And I was really in a good position, and I had property. But then when the money stopped coming in, I couldn't afford to keep those properties. The rent couldn't keep the properties going. So I had to sell. First, I sold one property, then I sold another property. And that was really depressing. And not only was it really depressing, but it put me in a state of anxiety. And that really started my spiral of really being in that state where I was quite, anxious about money, and things weren't going good for me. Anyway, I'll save you all the details, but let's just say I went from up here to literally down here, and, my life wasn't looking so great. Now, I also started a business at the time, my own business, and I also went to work for someone else. And I went to work for another guy who seemed like a pretty good guy. And I worked for him for a few months. And within about, I think, 7 months, I doubled his business by doing things very differently. And I thought he valued me until he didn't want to pay me any commission. And then he reneged on a promise of bonuses that he was going to pay me, and I didn't get it anymore. So I decided to leave him and then start my own business online. So I did my own business online, which was quite good. Had a few challenges, as you would if you've been in business, especially with staff. There's always an issue with staff. And I'm always going out and I was finding new customers and trying different things. But over this time, things weren't really the best and the finances were slowly drying up. And that's when I made a decision, well, actually it was a joint decision with my partner at the time, to sell up and move interstate to start a brand new life. Now, that's a story in itself, but let's just say if you've ever moved interstate, sold everything, moved your pets, sold literally all your belongings and completely started in a brand new place where you don't know anyone, it's very, very difficult, okay? So I moved to the Gold Coast where I am now, and I started new. I still had customers from my business, and I went out and got some new customers. But within a few weeks of me starting, my partner left me. So she left me, and that's a long story, but it wasn't good. I was left by myself. I was very depressed. I didn't know what to do. A friend reached out to me and said, you should go and do this Uber driving. I never heard of Uber driving, what that was, but basically said it was like a taxi and, you can go and drive people around. And I thought, oh, that sounds like a good idea. So I went and did that. And that, doing a few hours a week turned into a lot of hours a week, turned into working every weekend just to keep money going. But what I was doing, I was surviving. I wasn't thriving at all. All right. Now, I had tried a few things online. I'd tried some businesses online before. I tried network marketing. I've been in 1, 2, 3 different companies. I was in a company before once where I first started online. It was called a high ticket company where you sold products, personal development products that were quite high in price, but the commissions were very, very generous. So like 1,000, 5,000, and 9,000 US dollars. It was a lot harder to sell the products, but the commissions were fantastic. That was the first time I made some decent money online. In fact, it was close to 6 figures. But after I took away all my expenses, it wasn't so much, but I really did enjoy that company. Then I joined another company. I think it was in health and wellness. And then I joined another company in a different industry online. I really loved that company. I was there for 3 years. We were selling particular products that we call low commission. In other words, when I made a sale, I only made 20 or 50 US dollars. There was a lot of like face-to-face type of stuff, selling to people, family, friends, going to, hotels and meetings, going to people's homes and doing presentations. And, it wasn't for everyone, but I really enjoyed it. And I learned a lot of great things. I had some great personal development, great training. I went to events both here in Australia and overseas. But what I really learned from that company was that you really needed to be a good salesperson and know a lot of people to make a lot of money. Now, I don't know if this resonates for some of you watching, and I'll get to the end, but I'm just saying that I worked really, really hard for 3 years in this company. I never made any decent money. Like the most I made in a month was probably less than $2,000. And so eventually I was finding myself back to the start again, going, what do I do? And that's when I saw a post on the internet that caught my attention from someone I knew. And this post was talking about how she was really stuck. And then all of a sudden she found something completely changed her life. So being curious, I reached out to her. Now, of course, I was very aware of so many scams and things that don't work out there. I've been in a few myself and I was like, what is it? What is it? Tell me what it is. She wouldn't tell me what it is. It was all sort of secretive. She said, you just got to watch this presentation. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So I watched this presentation. And then when I watched the presentation, what really hit me more than anything else was that the people there were real. They were real people just like me. They'd been through similar things to me. They'd been at the bottom. Now they found their way up and they wanted to help more people. And that really resonated with me. Apart from everything else, that really resonated with me. Anyway, cut a long story short, it took me a few weeks to get going. I got started in this new business, and within a few weeks, everything changed for me. Everything. I went from being broken in credit card debt to having money in my bank account. First, it was small, then it was a lot of money. Then I started traveling, which was one of my dreams, was to go and travel. And I traveled to places I would never imagine I would have gone to. I sort of had this list of where I want to go, and then I went all these other places. And I only traveled like 3 times before this, but I started traveling. I did 47 international flights in 18 months, right? But I'm talking, I'm talking business class and economy plus, whatever it's called. And I'm also talking about staying in 5-star resorts and really top of the range B&Bs. I'm not talking about backpacking here. So you can imagine I was earning some pretty good money to be able to do this. And in fact, at one stage I was overseas and my assistant rang me up and told me how much money I'd made that day. And I literally fell over because it was that huge, that amazing. And I hadn't made anywhere near that sort of money in a long time, right? So everything changed for me 7.5 years ago. And the reason you're watching this is hopefully some of this story is resonating with you, whether it's the school, your jobs, your business. And what I found was that out of everything I looked at online, there wasn't anything that gave me a work-life balance. And what I mean by work-life balance is you still got to do work, but where I can choose what I want to do, go where I want to go. I can take off on holidays when I want. I can travel when I want. That's what I was looking for. And that's what a lot of people want to do. All right. So if any of this resonates with you, then trust me, you probably want to go and have a look at what the next step is. All right. So the next step for you, first of all, is to work out how much do you want a change in your life. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being that you've just watched this and you're like, no, I'm going to stick with my job. I get 100, 200 grand a year. Not really that motivated. Looks okay, but not for me. Or you're a 1 like, nah, it sounds too good to be true. You know what? If it sounds too good to be true, it's probably not for you. I'm looking for people that are motivated. You know, they're open-minded. They want the best for themselves, their family. They literally have a list of things they want to do and they just don't know how to get there. So if you're like an 8 or a 9 or a 10, all right, then this is for you. I want you to reach back out to me, however you found me, whether it's a message on one of the social medias or Facebook. I want you to reach back out to me and tell me what number are you? Are you a 1? If you're a 1, that's great. We'll say goodbye. I'll let you go. But if you're an 8 or a 9 or a 10, then I want to talk to you and get you going to the next step. All right. So let me know, reach back out to me and let me know if you want to go to the next step, because I'd love to be able to help you and show you a better life for you and your family and maybe achieve some of those dreams you've always wanted. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.